Welcome to the Body Bag Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Broke Brother Dave. With me is my co-host, Chris Thomas.
What's good, everybody?
And on this episode, we have a very special guest, a stuntman, a web developer, and now an author, William Perry.
Hey guys, what's up?
How is it going, sir?
All is good.
Yeah, gotta say, well, I gotta apologize in advance, not only to you, but to everybody listening. You guys get delirious, Chris, today. You guys get just coming down from COVID, Chris. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so you got sleep deprived, Chris. So I'm just putting it all out there right now. If I get like names wrong, or if I go on like kind of whatever thing, be gentle if you're critiquing this episode.
So he's a film expert and a phlegm expert.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's going on the resume. So once again, thank you for reaching out to us. It was a very pleasant surprise.
Oh, I'm totally excited about doing this. I tell people I'm going to sit and tell boring stories about doing movies and stunts all day long. It's nice to have somebody who's actually interested.
Yeah, we're excited to hear a bunch of your stories and get to know you on this podcast.
It's funny because he's like, oh, I'm telling boring stories. I'm over here kind of a little bit like starstruck, like we got a Hollywood guy over here. I'm over here getting wooed by our guest already.
Right.
Yeah, I'm getting the vapors already.
Yeah.
But not only a stuntman, but you do have a book which is dropping same day as this episode by his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, we plan it out sometimes over here. We can plan out things a little bit well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I didn't know that. That's awesome. The book was sort of a new thing for me. I did some writing, but not more marketing writing, not anything normally that you would consider, fiction stuff. It's marketing, so a lot of it is fiction. But this was something where I had a terrible, terrible nightmare. And I woke up in the morning and I told my wife about a minute of it. And she said, "Don't tell me this anymore." This is really dark and very scary. And I said, "Yeah." And I work with a publisher in the UK who I do some audiobooks for. I do some voiceover for him. And I told him the story and he said, "I listen to and read a lot of horror. And that's pretty freaking scary, dude." I was like, "Oh, thanks." He said, "Do you want to write it?" I said, "I don't know if I'm a writer. I mean, in the, that kind of sense." And he's like, "Well, give me a couple of weeks. If I don't do something, we'll take a swing." And so I wrote it as fast as I could write. I mean, it was very vivid, very visceral in a, I guess in a really very literal way, I guess, in some scenes from it. And I wrote it really fast. It was very emotional for me because it's a lot of real. I would say 75% of the people and places and situations are all really in my life. And so the scenes that are very personal and very scary were extra personal and extra scary. In fact, I had even considered not putting the actual names of the people in the book because when I started writing it, it was horrifying. It was really scary.
And it was reliving it all over again.
Yeah. And to put it into very, realistic and very present terms, I did keep the names of family and friends in the book because it made it harder. It made it deeper. It made it more intense, which I think informed some of the way I write. And I changed names at the end because I just felt like I needed to. But it was a very, it's like watching, somebody said, "Are you going to make it into a screenplay?" I said, "Well, I've already watched it. I've already seen this thing." And it's,
in HD, I got the 3D experience.
Super, I mean, actually very in 4D because I felt it. I smelled it. It was one of those things where there was nothing in the dream that wasn't reality based. There was no like all of a sudden I can fly or the refrigerator.
You don't get the good ones, like
So with all of that, when I woke up, it was that moment of how much of that happened. Holy shit, And so, like, fortunately, I woke up very quickly and went, "Oh, I didn't do any of that." Okay, well, that's good. But so when I wrote it out, I sent it to a couple of people. A friend of mine's an author, and he teaches writing at Santa Monica College here in Los Angeles. And I said, "Can you read it?" He said, "Yeah." was like, what? He's like, I don't like reading people's first drafts. Said, well, would you? And he's like, yeah, I guess I
I
would.
appreciate your honesty, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I sent it to him, and he was on a plane when he read it, and he looked up and he noticed that they had free Wi-Fi, and he said, I have to write him right now. And he wrote to me and he said, dude, that's so gnarly. Yeah. I said, is it good? He goes, I started making corrections, and I did it for about 5 pages, and then I was kind of sucked in, and I thought, how does this guy know how to write? He said, there's some things in there. The way you described it was very physical. And, he said I actually made sounds like, oh, this sort of thing. And I said, so that's good. And he's like, no, it's really good. He said, I really don't have any changes for you. And
that's really for a first draft. That's about the best you can hear, best news you can hear, I would think.
Oh, hell yeah. So I was very excited by that. And then I sent it to some people I've met purely on Instagram, horror fans from around. And I handed it to a couple of people and said, please be brutally honest. Don't, I call it the broccoli in my teeth. I don't want to find out at the end of the day that I've had broccoli in my teeth since noon and nobody wanted to say anything.
I understand. That's why I'm awful. Like, back in college and high school, when we'd have to make read first drafts and then make constructive criticism, I was always too nice. I always felt like I was being too harsh. Yeah. I hate giving criticism like that. We're a little bit better at it now. I mean, we kind of have to be. We do a review and a review show, so.
Yeah, I was terrified at first to get those first reviews because, some people were friends, but some of the people were not. And it's the people who were not friends, because people who know me know how much of this book is true. And we talk about arthritis and hand pain and all the things I can't do anymore because of it. And that's all real. And so people who know me said, wow, knowing you really is kind of hard. This book hits really hard because I realize how much, daily pain you deal with. And it's like, yeah, but that's not what I'm asking about. They're like, no, just, they said, and then also I know how you feel about your family and your friends. And so when these things in the book happen, it was like, oh my God, that must have been the scariest thing in the whole world. It's like, yeah, well, I'm glad it did that. But was it going to work with people who don't know me? And so as those reviews have kind of trickled in, it's been very, gratifying. Somebody again said, I actually, I made audible sounds like, oh, fuck, when it happened, I'm like, well, good. That's exactly what I wanted to happen, because that was the reaction I had when I wrote it.
Yeah, I think the theme of this book kind of played on fear I didn't even know I had until I was listening to your book of being a prisoner in my own body. Yeah. Now also that's my biggest fear.
Well, my wife is a psychologist, and so as I was talking to her about this, she said, "Do you want to know where this is coming from?" And I hadn't quite written it all yet. And I said, yeah, what do you think? And she said, you're afraid of dementia and you're afraid of Alzheimer's real bad. And I watched my mom pass away from dementia. And I've watched some other people I know who've had Alzheimer's, and that's exactly, they're trapped, in this body that's doing things that they can't control anymore. And they become someone you don't know. And everyone around you is affected by it in the worst way, especially the people you really care about. And when I knew that, I was like, oh, whoa, that's deep. And it really informed the way I wrote the rest of the book, because I started thinking about, okay, that being the premise for my fear, or the fear of this character in the book, how would that, where are things going to go? Who's it going to hurt? How bad?
Yeah.
And as that came, it was like all of it. Wes Craven was my boss for a while. I used to do some writing for him actually on his website. And I asked him one time, how do you do this? How do you determine what's scary? And he was a humanities professor, and he said, you learn what scares people when you take a psychology class or a humanities class or a philosophy class, and you learn what scares them. And then learn what scares them when they're little. Because the things that scare you as a little kid, scare you as a grown-up, you've just learned to deal with it. But if I can grab you by the 7-year-old psyche and really play on that fear, I can give you major trauma really quickly. And that had always stuck with me, although I'd never really done the writing I did for him. People would ask questions on the website, and I'd ask him a few questions, and he'd talk for a little bit, and then I'd try to put it in Wes's terms, the way he spoke and the way he wrote. And so I had just enough of that, and he talked about things like where Freddie's sweater came from and why is it green and red and why was there a hat and why is all this stuff. And so as he would do that, as he would talk about those things, it's like, you crafty bastard, that's really good. It sounds formulaic, but it still takes a bit of sensitivity to figure out, well, what is it that's going to work? And so I felt like I got a little bit of that. And then reading so many horror books for this author gave me quite a bit of insight into the structure and how people, I knew a lot of things I didn't want to do. I didn't want a Scooby-Doo ending. Oh, if it wasn't for those meddling kids, I'd have gotten away with it. I didn't want anything like that, so I think I knew what to avoid, even if I didn't know what I wanted.
So you said when I was talking to you about that you kind of saw it like in your head cinematically. I had because you're painting one picture. I'm gonna get your picture, and then I'll tell you what I kind of pictured cinematically in terms of so in your mind, do you have like a movie that you could compare it to maybe cinematically that you had like this, or what's the best way that you can say, well, I had this in my mind when I was writing it?
I have to say there was a bit of I guess the term is a first person shooter, kind of game sort of thing, where the part of it that made it so frightening for me, and I hope it's conveyed in the book, is that you could feel it, you could taste it, you could hear it, if it was cold, you felt cold. All of the sensations that you would have, I felt very, very vividly. And so when I was writing it, that was kind of the thing that I didn't know if I was going to be able to convey all that sense of being trapped, but having every sensation and not being able to.
I could tell that it was going to be a very sensory type of book, or especially early on when you're in the book. I'm not going to get into any spoilers, like I said, but in the book, his hand begins to, without his knowledge, contort. And I believe he was he in church and he was signing?
And there is exactly the gentleman that I talked about, and that situation sort of based on a real situation where my hand was just cramped, and he said, "Oh, your hand's that's a letter," and I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah," and that's, I think, when the story came to me, that was it's not giving anything away. In fact, I have a 5-minute sample of the book, and I get to that point because I think it sets the stage for that WTF moment of, what do you mean I'm spelling? What do you mean I'm doing something that I'm not aware of? And so, that was kind of that was, I think, the most pivotal thing that hit me when I woke up. It was, what if that was happening? What if you were spelling and you didn't even know it? What would be causing that?
I was just gonna say, in my mind, when I was thinking of it cinematically, I don't know why, but my mind went to The Usual Suspects and Seven.
That's a fine comparison. I'm going to take it. Hey, honey, he just compared me to Seven. Yeah.
Mostly Kevin Spacey, like recapping the story and thinking of it more of as a unreliable narrator.
Yes.
Of a guy trying to, a clearly guilty man, but putting all this passion into this story that he fabricated. And in my mind, it was Kevin Spacey from The Usual Suspects, kind of like giving that story like he did in the movie.
Is his name?
Kaiser Soze. Verbal. Yeah.
Well, Verbal Quint, I think.
Verbal Quint. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was, when I was writing it, I was hoping that there was nothing out there like it. One of the things that I've been in a lot of horror movies, and one of the things you see a lot is a lot of repetition. Things that it's like, okay, you know where this is going. And I hate knowing where it's going. I love when somebody can not so much jump scare me, but have me go, wait, what the hell? In fact, one of the I wouldn't say it's a negative review, but a friend of mine wrote to me yesterday and said, "So what was it?"
No, but that's what I thought was kind of perfect about it, because when I was writing notes, I was going back and I was like, all right, is this about a guy's descent into madness? Is this about a guy who did all this and is feeling regretful? Is this a guy who's telling the truth and he literally has no control over what he's doing?
Yeah.
Well, and he was irritated. And I said, does it make you uncomfortable? And he said, yes.
Yes, of course it does. I want to know.
Yeah. I said, remember, this is remember the genre you're reading. This isn't, a romance novel. I want you to feel uncomfortable. I want you to feel like, I'm really almost sorry I read that. I'm going to be thinking about that all night. Good. Well, that's what it's supposed to do. Yeah, I guess,
Yeah, like you said, I don't think I've read anything like this before, so definitely enjoy it. And it's so descriptive, it hits the point, but you do it in such a small amount of pages. How are you able to accomplish something like that?
I'll tell you, that's a very funny comment, and I'll tell you why. This was painful to write, emotionally speaking, and I just wanted to get it over with. In fact, somebody had asked me, "Are you going to make a screenplay?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been asked, by somebody, and there's going to be a lot more mayhem because you kind of have to fill an hour and a half or so." And that part was easy, but writing about that kind of stuff was, I remember getting to the point where there's a very, very key person gets hurt by this, and I stopped in the middle and I just walked away. I just couldn't do it. And when I finally, I think I waited a week and I came back and I was like, oh, fuck, I just got to do this. And I just sat and I wrote it and I did it in about 2 hours. And when I was done, I was like, oh, thank God I'm past that part.
Is it that scene that I told you was the one that stuck out to me?
Yes.
I don't know if I should say it.
Yes, the scene that follows it was just as bad, if not worse. And oh God! And so when I thought about it, I'm looking at the number of pages that I've written and realizing I could go on for a long time, but I didn't want to anymore. Yeah. It was like, oh yeah, and I mean, I did, but I didn't. It's one of those things when you're writing it and you realize, I think this is good. I think this is new. I think this is a real act of creation here. For lack of I hate to make it sound that good. But it was really exciting, to feel like, I can do this, I think. And so the next version, I started on the screenplay, which is ridiculously opposite. It's better in some ways, it's worse in so many others, but I was putting more into it and there's more depth to make you think he's just gone crazy. But no, he couldn't just be crazy because why would he do this? So I found myself being able to embellish both sides of the argument. And I was telling it to my friend and he's like, well, you're not helping me at all. I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to build something you'll enjoy or freak out about.
That's like how the director for American Psycho intentionally left it open-ended, even though people asked her, well, did he really kill people, or or was it a cover-up, or what? And she said, "Well, I don't want to tell you. I'd rather you just draw your own conclusion."
Yeah.
One of my favorite musicians is Elvis Costello. He wrote his autobiography, and in it, he was talking about why he never tells people what the lyrics mean. Because he said, some of these people have been listening to these songs for 20, 30, 40 plus years, and it means something to them because of a moment or a time in their life, or when they needed something. And then he said, if I told you what the song meant and it wasn't that, it's like, no, that was about my dog. It's like, oh fuck, I didn't know Allison was a dog. Oh, shit, I had a girlfriend named Allison. You've completely ruined my childhood. My adolescence. So
that song was meant for me.
I took that. Yeah, what are you talking about? Yeah. And so I kind of I like that philosophy of don't tell anybody what it means. And he also said too, somebody said, you wrote the song Watching the Detectives, that would make a great film noir. And he said, I wrote it as a song because that's what it was. If I could have written it in any other way, or made a painting or made a movie or any of those other things, that's what I would have done. It's the song because that's what it is. I'm an artist and I do it in the format it comes to me. Don't ask me to, elaborate on something when it's a great song.
I think that idea is lost on a lot of people, even in the horror community. I mean, horror itself is supposed to be mysterious and kind of an unknown thing. That's what makes things scary, is fear of not knowing, fully knowing.
Yeah, my son and I were actually talking about this even today. He was talking about movies that his generation. He's about 28 now, and he was talking about Saw, and he was talking about all these different films, which are very different to me from what I consider horror. A lot of those are so they're clever and they're intense and they're graphic, but I don't know that I consider them scary.
I'd say the first one was probably
elements of it are
okay. As it went on, though,
it's creative ways to kill people.
Yeah. Now I'll admit, because I have a soft spot for that franchise, but even I'll admit that the first one was legitimately entertaining. It had a decent twist and left you kind of wondering and thinking, asking yourself enough questions like, "Oh my God, what does that mean about this scene?" But as the series went on, as much as I enjoy it for what it is, it did get like, all right, you guys are kind of like rinsing and repeating like all of the greatest hits from the last thing here. So
there's a thing I play guitar, and there's a set of dice that I have, and it's two different dice, and they have chord number or chord insignias on different sides, and they're like 12-sided dice, and you roll the dice, and between all of them, you just say, okay, just for the sake of kind of creativity, I'm going to play the chords in the order that they came up on the dice. And they're all, meant for the same key. So it makes sure that it sort of works. And it's just kind of like a writing prompt. And I feel like there's somebody somewhere who's got a set of dice, and on it, it's got eyeball, knife, ski pole and boiling water. Okay, let's put those together and see what happens.
Yeah.
And it becomes so formulaic that it's like, we're just looking for new ways to slice and dice. Come on, man. I don't care about these people. You're just dicing them up anyway. I don't, it's not frightening to me if I don't care about the people. I want to know them, and I want to know, I want to have a reason, and always the bad guy. And it's like, I love Scream to death for this reason, because they took all those rules and they threw them up in the air and said, you don't get to know what's going to happen this time. Nothing about this is going to obey the rules you think. And I remember reading it right when Wes was doing it, and I thought, you'll never get it made.
I'm glad he did get it made.
Well, I just said, it's too freaking scary. I've read the first part up to where they find the kid, duct taped to the chair. I'm like, no way! I don't even want to read. I don't want to read this anymore.
You're not going to be able to sell this to a studio.
Exactly. And he was like, no, it's funny. I'm like,
you want to kill who in the first 10 minutes?
Exactly. And since a good friend of mine was the guy who killed her in that scene, and I remember thinking, no, Drew Barrymore is blonde, dude. And he's like, that's who it is. I'm like, well, they're not killing her in the first minute, like first 3. Like, no, they film it out of sequence, you douche.
Not only are we killing her, we're disemboweling her too. Like,
we're not doing it. This is no, subtle off-screen scream. This is when I say visceral, I mean evisceral.
And it was smart that they marketed around Drew Barrymore too.
Oh, I thought it was great. I mean, the casting was so good.
Its marketing is brilliant marketing to do that.
Yeah, it when you saw it, you were like, wait a minute, are we going to be?
They're not going to kill her.
Yeah, they're going to have flashbacks. She's the final girl, And so there's so much about that was just brilliant. And I have to say, I read it before it was filmed, and I just thought it was scary and gory, but between the casting and just Wes's demonic touch, really, it was so much better than what I had imagined it to be. I thought in the beginning, I was like, oh, one more of these things. But I remember seeing it in the theater going, damn, you scared the crap out of me. You made me laugh, and you absolutely threw me. I never knew what was happening. It never felt like I had any sense about what was going on or what was going to happen next. And that's what you want. I don't want to walk out of there going, yeah, I saw that coming. I saw it in the first minute of Sixth Sense. No, you didn't. You lied. Yeah, that's really the joy of these things, is to have it be something new and interesting that just makes you go. I remember seeing Alien for the first time and realizing we haven't even seen that. All I've seen is people going, "Arr!" and being so scared. They didn't show you people die. They didn't even show you the monster, I think, for 38 minutes. But that to me, that's a scary movie.
Yeah, build up that suspense of it. Once you finally saw it, it paid off.
If the face that Veronica Cartwright made didn't make you want to leave the theater, I don't know what's going on with you. I was like, holy shit, whatever she's looking at is so bad.
Yeah.
Seeing as how we're kind of delving into like more of the movie talk, I just wanted to give Dave a last chance if he had any other questions about By His Hand. Seeing as how we're kind of shifting into more movie talk.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's good. I like it. It's a very
the
flow is natural. I just wanted to make sure that before we get too far away from the book, if Dave had any other questions about it.
No, we're good to shift into the movie talk.
Okay, but By His Hand will be available February 17th, I believe you said is the date?
Yeah, it's actually pre-selling now, but of course, people aren't going to hear this till the 17th.
Yeah.
So yes, it's the 17th is the official launch day, and if anybody out there is interested, it's merely $1, if you can imagine how literally just dirt cheap. I think it's worth an hour of your time.
Is it just an audio form?
No, it's an ebook, and it's an audiobook, and there is some discussion about having it be an illustrated novelette. I mean,
that would be really cool.
Version.
Yeah,
and it's funny. I mean, I'm a graphic artist as well. I did the cover and all that, and I did the audiobook as well.
I was about to say, you sound very familiar. I've heard this voice.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask, one of the questions I was going to ask you is like, so who'd you get to narrate this thing? I like the sound of his voice when of the narrator that you got.
Well, yeah, I started doing the audiobooks for this place called Red Cave Publishing about 3 or 4 years ago. They do the A to Z of horror. And so I think we just finished I is for Internet. Or no, we finished J is for Jack-o'-lantern. So there's another, and there's going to be 26 books, obviously, when this is all done. And I started with B. Somebody else got book A. And it's great stuff. And it's so much fun because it's 13 stories of different writers from all over the world, all indie writers, and the stories are so much better than what I had imagined they would be. They're so good. And we did like E is for exorcism, so I had to come up with 13 different voices of the devil to make that work.
Yeah.
Like after a while, one of the authors had said, when you hear your demonic voice, you always think it's going to sound like Linda Blair. He said, but no, it's just my voice. I'm like, oh, thank God for you.
Yeah. I was like, we have to hear your demonic voice. So what did you? We have to hear one of them.
Let's see. A lot of it is it's very it's out of the exorcism. It's very much like this. A lot of scratchiness and that kind of what you would imagine. But then other people had it where it was very high pitched, and you do have to differentiate when you're doing an audiobook. One of the tricks is people have to know who's talking just by your delivery. Sometimes if there's a man and a woman, I don't hello, Mrs. Promise. I'm not doing Monty Python, women's voices. Yeah. So you have to change the delivery. And some of the devils and some of the exorcisms and stuff like that, you can't just do the same voice 13 stories in a row. Yeah. So a lot of times people would talk about how the person talked with more of a hiss. Sometimes it was very deep. Sometimes it was just annoying. Just is irritating. Gilbert Godfrey on helium, whatever you could think of, to try to make it as irritating and awful sounding so that it's as annoying to the person reading, the book or listening to the book as it was to the person who was in the story. So it's a lot of different silliness, but fun.
I'm gonna have to look up some of those audiobooks, start listening to them.
Yeah, I won't. I'll send you one.
Appreciate it.
We'll edit that out.
Yeah. If you ever get it, if you were gonna pick one, there's one that is C is for Cannibals.
C is for Cannibals.
13 stories that are so good. I remember reading it, going, "This has got to be the best book ever," in this series, and I still think it stands up to being one of the best for sure. So that's one. They're so cheap too. I think they said they're like $1 or $2, and they're great stories to just like if you're sitting at work and you're doing something kind of mindless that doesn't require a whole lot of reading and writing. They're great books to listen to because it's just like, oh my God, that's the greatest story. And I'm not saying my readings that what makes it amazing. I'm saying these stories are jaw-droppingly good.
Yeah, I was so happy that it came in audio form because Dave is very much the reader between both of us.
Yeah,
I find it hard to kind of sit down and plant myself and sit and read. So being able to listen. If I can listen to an audiobook and do things at the same time, I can concentrate more on it. Weirdly, so
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, me too. It's almost like the story is in the background and I'm listening and I'm paying attention, but I do a lot of graphic design and sometimes the work can get kind of tedious. So if there's a lot of, tedium to it, I'll just put on one of those. And I just feel like when the work goes faster, the book goes quickly, and I got to do two things at once. I didn't, my ADHD, gets satisfied massively.
So before we get into the movie talk of we got Dream Warriors today, going through your IMDb, you actually kind of slithered your way into a lot of my childhood movies, at least according to your IMDb. I saw Hook in there. I saw Home Alone 2 in there. I was like, this guy's been with me since the beginning.
The sequel king. He calls me. He says, "You're the sequel king. You were in so many sequels." It's like, yeah, I didn't do anything real. I just did all the sequels. But,
they're still great. Like I love, like I said, Hook and Home Alone too. I love those two movies. And
there's a few. There's some scary ones in there. There's also like one of the more fun ones is Return of the Living Dead Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that was so much fun is that, number one, it was comedy, scary, and I was a zombie. Zombies don't die. Zombies can be run over by cars. They can be shot in the face. They can be, all these. And so you just don't die. So as a stuntman, usually when your character gets run over by a car, well, that's the end of your show.
Time for lunch.
Yeah, time for lunch. You're going home, So in that one, because there was somebody that I was doubling that was just keeps coming back for more. He gets run over by a meat truck. He gets electrocuted. He gets stabbed in the mouth with a screwdriver. He gets thrown off a catwalk. All these different things. And I was like, this is the best job ever, man. There's a lot of my whole niche for people who wouldn't know me. I'm short, and I was really skinny back then, 125 pounds, maybe 5'6", and so I doubled a lot of kids. So if that's the sort of thing that will tie most of those films together for you, is there was a kid on this show and they didn't want him to do his own stunts, or they couldn't let him do his own stunts at the time, and so they got to find somebody with the girlish arms of a 13-year-old boy.
Hey, pays the bills.
Well, it's funny because a lot of the other, when I got into doing stunts, a guy, it was actually a Wes Craven movie, a friend of mine was a stunt coordinator, and he said, I got this kid. He's 5'6", brown hair, brown eyes. God, he looks just like you. Do you do anything like that? I was like, I was a skateboarder. I was a martial artist, all that stuff, mountain bikes and motorcycles. And he's like, wow, man, there's a lot of work for you. And I said, there's nobody else that does this? And he said, everybody else is an ex-gymnast. So they got 45-inch chest and, big shoulders and biceps. He's like, you got none of that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, the girls tell me that. Yeah. That's been my claim to fame with the ladies. They're like, oh, you're like my little brother.
That's what you want to hear.
That's gonna
right.
That's gonna rule out sex, then, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
unless it's gonna get really weird.
Yeah. If it doesn't rule that out, then I still don't want to do that. But so the body, size and all that was really a big deal. So a lot of the, all the horror movies, the classic horror movies, were all made in the 80s and 90s, and that's kind of when I was coming up. And so, like movies like Newsies, it's all young teenage guys.
Mm-hmm.
All the horror movies, Nightmare 3, 4, 6, all these movies were, you're roughly killing off teenagers as quickly as you can. And so there was me and about 5 other guys that did the majority of the work, because all the other stuntmen were 5'10", 180 pounds, muscly and, doing, Raiders of the Lost Ark. But for us, little guys, yeah, baby.
I'm sure Dave has some questions, because you're talking to like the big Wes guy of the podcast.
I'll tell anyone that listens that Wes Craven's the greatest director in horror. So a big part of how I got into horror was through Scream and A Nightmare on Elm Street.
And he did a lot more.
Oh yeah.
One of my best friends is a guy named Tony Caesar, who was unknown to most people, but absolutely the man. He did 18 of Wes's movies, and he was in The Thing. He was in
my movie,
Thing and Swamp Thing. But there was one Serpent in the Rainbow and all of these different things. Tony was a fire guy and as a specialty, but was also a stunt coordinator. And he brought me in on this. And he, when he would talk about Wes, he said, "Oh, he's a really cool guy." And I did 3 movies with him. And then after I decided to kind of hang up my shoulder pads, he said, "Hey, Wes is looking for a web developer." And I said, "Oh, I do that." And he's like, yeah, but don't tell him you do movies, because he doesn't want some guy that's going to, try to be getting a movie job out of it, which was funny because I'd already worked for him 3 times. And I had made such an impression, he had no idea who I was.
That's funny.
Yeah. But when I started to just work with him, he's the funniest guy you'd ever want to meet. Not dark, not creepy, like your dad's best buddy that just cracks you up at the dinner table.
Well, a lot of his movies have that. Even his horror movies have a sense of humor to them too.
So.
Yeah, and a very gentle sort of soul. Kind of always seemed like he was still trying to make his best movie. One that people would really, really appreciate, not just horror fans. And I was doing his site for him when he did Music, The Heart, and some of these other movies that were not, horror at all. It was, Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
And I think he finally felt like, now people are going to see me as a director. It's kind of one of those things. He's been gone for a while now. And I think of how many people tell me, "Oh my gosh, best director ever." It's like, oh, he needed to hear that.
Yeah.
He needed to hear that. But he needed to hear it from, he needed to hear it from the Academy.
He needed to be validated by somebody with authority.
Yeah, and somebody that whose standards, in horror films, I listen to a lot of different horror podcasts, and people will like the worst movies. It just makes me scratch my head like, wait a minute, you didn't see that coming. Yeah, and but they love these films, and I think Wes just thought the bar wasn't raised high enough in horror. And I think it was with Scream and all that. Although he also told me, Scream 3, that's it. They won't make another. I swear on my life. I swear on the lives of my children. Scream 3 is going to be the end. Coming up on Scream 6 or 7 or whatever it is coming up.
Yeah, Scream 6 is next month.
That's what's making me worried. I don't. It's beloved franchise. You don't want it to get too.
I know. The trailers are great, and I look at that and go, please don't disappoint me. I've been hurt before.
The last time a killer went to New York, it was Jason Takes Manhattan. We can't.
yeah. Please don't do that to me.
Yeah.
God. Jason also went to space. That was good, though, right?
That was we got Uber Jason out of that.
Yeah.
When I saw
the story wasn't great, but there were some kills that were pretty good to see.
The hell you mean the story wasn't great?
I have a shirt that somebody sent to me, and it's a hybrid of Jason and the Predator. And I was in, not Jason, Freddy and the Predator. And it says The Predator. And for me, I was laughing about it because I was in Predator 2 and then in all these different Freddy movies. And people are like, "Is that real?" I'm like, do you want it to be? Do you seriously want that to be true? A hybrid of Freddy and the Predator. Good God, there's got to be something original in this world that we're not actually just going, we could make a few bucks on Predator.
Yeah, I don't think that'd be a good movie. That would be terrible.
It's one of those things that could probably be a great comic book. Maybe that would work because it would be funny enough. But yeah, I look at some of these franchises and I go, please, you're just doing the same thing over and over. Would you just stop running? There's original ideas out there, right? So I guess maybe not. I mean, I know it's easy to make. I mean, and I asked Wes one time, when is Freddy going to die? He's like, when he stops making money.
Exactly. It's the house. What did they say about New Line Cinema? It's the house that Freddy built or paid for, or something like that.
Yeah. And I was it was funny. I was watching Nightmare 3 last night in preparation for this, and I realized, Wes was one of like 5 writers on that, and he did have his hand in most of the Freddy franchise, but he didn't want to do another Freddy. He didn't feel like there was anything. And then when all of them were done and we finally did Freddy's Dead, then he came out with a new one, which was Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which was a kind of a take on what had happened to the cast and crew because of this film. And I remember him still thinking, I still didn't break the mold, though. I still didn't do it. And that's when Scream happened, and Kevin Williamson brought in that book. And he was like, okay, now I can make a movie again. Now I can make a horror film that's going to absolutely break the mold and do something so new and so different that I don't have to worry that people think I'm just, rehashing my old movies over and over. And I think that made him very happy to be able to feel like, finally, something new, something different, something that's, not in my wheelhouse already.
Scream's going to be my all-time favorite movie, probably until the day I die.
Yeah, it's got that.
Yeah.
It's really got that. It was so unique for its time, still unique today. I mean, you can make as many sequels as you want. And, I think they've done some interesting Screams. Scream 2, I thought was all right. 3, 4, 5, it's hard to come up with something new when you're talking about a film that's tried to break the mold.
When the big gimmick, when you had the big gimmick, it's hard to repeat perfection, I guess.
Yeah. I look at Alien and then Aliens and go, yeah, they managed to do it. They made a sequel that managed to rip it open. And then, of course, they did Alien 7, The Final Beginning or whatever. Yeah. And it's just, you lost me.
Yeah. Went downhill fast from there.
Yeah. And I thought, they're bringing Sigourney back. Oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, Sigourney, do you have a boat payment to make? What happened? What happened? Your kids got new braces. You fall on hard times. You got a gambling problem. Why did you broke my heart, babe?
Well, I kind of like that. I kind of like actors or actresses who will just take anything. Like you could, Eric Roberts does that.
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine does that. Nick Cage does that. You will see them in like a Christopher Nolan movie one day, and then an Asylum picture the next day. Like it's
absolutely.
I love that.
And I get it. I remember I'm a big fan of Michael Caine, and somebody had said, "Why did you do Jaws 4?" He said, "Because I'm an actor. They paid me to do it."
I heard it was like, well, did you see the house that I just bought? And that was his answer.
Yeah. There was a great story the other day I saw with him. He said he tried out for the role of a Cockney tough guy in a play, and he didn't get it. And he said, if I can't get a part as the Cockney tough guy in a play, I can't do anything. And he was so disappointed because he's Cockney, and at the time he was kind of a big guy. And he said 3 years later, he drove by the theater, and the same guy that got that part was in the play still. And he says, and I pulled up in my Rolls Royce and went, well, that worked out all right. I was like, yeah, sometimes no is the answer that you need, not the answer.
Sometimes you don't need to hear a yes every single time.
Yeah. And, of course, he says yes to almost anything. And he's done a lot of turds. I mean, some just terrible things. But he's also, his work in the Batman movies was, I thought, excellent. And plenty of other movies, dozens and dozens. But he will do pretty much anything you'll pay him to do as long as his schedule's open. And I admire that. It's like, yeah, man, they can't all be, Oscar winners.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do the stuff and you don't know what it's going to happen.
Cast a wide enough net, you're bound to get a couple Oscar winners out of that.
Well, watching Nightmare 3 last night was Arquette, Patricia Arquette.
Excellent segue.
Oscar winner.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Johnny Depp, was in Nightmare 1.
Yeah.
There's a handful of people that were in Scream that, turned out to be, much better, doing much bigger and better things and more. I'm trying to think like, what was this? The guy that does, I think it was a Scream 2 that he was in. He did.
Timothy Olyphant?
Showtime.
Yeah.
No, I'm thinking another.
Jerry O'Connell?
He does Ray Donovan.
I don't know. He played Cotton Weary. What's his name, though?
I know. Are you talking about the dude from Kangaroo Jack?
No, that's Jerry O'Connell. What was his name?
Well, at least it's not just my concussions talking. It's yours, too. How good.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of folks started out in low budget, horror films that were incredibly skilled and, went on to much bigger and better things. And that's awesome. That's why when I was
Liev Schreiber.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, old Sabretooth.
Yeah.
But obviously a very gifted actor doing great work, and there's just a lot of them out there that did these films, and I think they did them going, well, it's a credit. My agent wants me.
Never knowing that they were like making a classic.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully not getting so pigeonholed into doing just genre films that they get stuck there.
So sorry, go ahead, Dave.
You go.
No, I was just gonna ask, of the stunt work that you've done in your whole like filmography, do you have one that stands out in which you were like, I don't know if I can do that?
Yeah, another '80s movie. I used to double the Corey's. It was Corey Feldman and Corey
Oh, the Lost Boys.
Haim. Yeah. And they also did a movie called License to Drive. And there's a scene at the very beginning of the film where the kid is inside. He's having a dream, and he's just terrified that he's going to be driving the bus for the rest of his life. So he's driving in the bus with a bunch of kids who are all just like zombies, and the bus driver's going nuts. And he looks out and he sees his dream girl sitting in a Ferrari. And he's like, oh man, I want that so bad. And so he dives through the rear window of the bus while it's moving down the street, rolls to his feet, jumps in the car, and scoots off with the girl. And then I remember thinking, because since we were going down the street, I had to land on a follow vehicle. And I thought, I'm going to go through glass, which is never fun. It's candy glass, but it's still sharp and it still cuts you pretty deep.
Not as cool doing it in person as it looks on TV.
Yeah. No. And I remember thinking, all right, well, we're going to do that. And then I have to basically do sort of I gotta land in sort of a judo slap as I land on the follow vehicle, which is basically a trailer. But there's a camera on the trailer. There's a camera on the vehicle following next door to us. So there's a lot of stuff. And I thought, what if I don't go far enough? I get run over. What if I hit my heels? Yeah. And so I remember just thinking to myself, I could actually really get hurt doing this. And it wasn't a great stunt. This isn't, Raiders of the Lost Ark cool. This is a teen movie. And I thought, I could really get screwed up. I didn't necessarily get hurt too bad. I got some glass stuck in my arm. We had to do it a couple of times. But I remember at the time thinking, I wonder what this is worth dollars-wise. Because I could really get maimed doing this. And so when it was done, he said, how much do you want? I'm like, I don't know, $500 each. He's like, no, $1,500, you idiot. I'm like, oh, okay.
And then you learn never to lowball yourself ever again.
Well, yeah. But I remember thinking to myself, I actually just priced my life for $500. Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't have known either. I would have said something probably less. Like, so how much do we owe? I don't know. $150. I don't know. Yeah. You just don't know, And the only stunt that actually ever really hurt me on set, there was another total nobody ever saw it movie called Breaking the Rules, and I had to get stuffed into a clothes dryer. And what happens is in the story, he gets stuffed in the clothes dryer, and then it gets stuck. The door won't open. And spinning around until he barfs. And they put me in a real clothes dryer at a real laundromat, and they turned the heat off, but they had to have so many lights on the thing to show that I was actually in there that it got just as warm as far as I was concerned. And they would run it for a minute at a time. And you think, okay, well, a minute's not that bad, right? But think about
terrible.
That sounds awful.
Think about being out on in the gym, and you have to do 60 consecutive somersaults across the ground. When you got up, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to barf. You're gonna totally barf. So I do it the first time, and I get out, and every time that thing would turn upside down, it would drop me on my head. Oof. And I'm hitting those stupid paddles inside, that are supposed to, agitate your laundry. And so every time that thing would turn upside down, bang, I'd land on my head.
This just seems so non-professional. Like it feels like surely there would have been a easier way to film a scene like that without actually shoving you in a dryer.
Well. Yeah. So we do it, and I get out, and my stunt coordinator looks at me and he says, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm bleeding, dude. I got this spot on the back of my head, man. I whacked my head." and he's like, "Okay, we're going again." Oh God. And he says, "Can you do it again?" I said, "I can, but I'm gonna barf." He's like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "No, dude, I'm this close now." He's like, "Will you do it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do it, but I'm
just forewarning you."
I'm like, I said, "Put a trash can, a lined one, close." And he's laughing. And I'm like, I'm really not kidding about that. And so I get out, and I hadn't had lunch, but I did a nice piece of work on that. And so barf all over the place. And my middle name is actually Ralph. So from that point forward, everybody in the industry has to call me Ralphie. Thank you very much.
Your name is Ralph Perry.
Yeah. William Ralph Perry. Yeah. So now it's why only William R on everything.
Yeah.
But so we do it again, and he's like, "Can you do it another time?" I'm like, you know what? No, I'm done. I'm not going to make any money on this bullshit. I'm not going to whack my head again. And I got home and I recognized I had a concussion from it, from just the repeated whacks on the head. And it's one of those things. The movie never even came out. I mean, it's on video, but it never went out in the theaters. And it's I watched it the other day just because I been sort of putting together a collection in my little library of everything I've done. And I was what's his name? Bateman. Got the kids that's on Ozark. Kid.
Jason Bateman.
Jason Bateman. Yeah.
Jason Bateman. I'm thinking Justine. I'm like, no, it was definitely a guy. So I realized I was his double. I'm like, I didn't even know who he was at the time, because he wasn't really, the guy, wasn't as big a star as he is now. Yeah. And I thought, I got a concussion. I got beaten. I got burned, and I got bled.
Did they come up to you? Did they come up to you and go, out? Sorry, or did they come up to you and go, so concussion, you're bleeding and everything, so how much you want?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The guy who did it was like, he had to do it after, because they wanted to go one more time. And I'm like, can't do it. So he didn't actually even give me a stunt adjustment for it, because he said, oh, you're a puss. I'm like, puss I may be, but I'm not going to. I was so dizzy. In fact, since that day, I used to do some gymnastics kind of stuff. Now I can't roll over in bed quickly without getting super dizzy. And since that day, that effed me up bad.
Never left you.
Thing,
Yeah.
And I've done so many other better stunts that, I would say, yeah, that was a pretty good stunt. Nope. That's the one that effed me up. That's the one that I probably will suffer dementia from later. Thank you very much. I've had like 7 concussions, and that was probably about number 5. And now they tell you, oh, you wouldn't let somebody play football if they had 3 concussions. I'm like, so is 7 bad then?
You wouldn't let this guy jump out of a moving car who's had 5 concussions?
Yeah. So some of them were from like martial arts and skateboarding before I got into the business, but who knew that head injuries were bad?
Yeah.
Most people, Bill.
Yeah.
Most people would say that's bad.
Well, on like the opposite spectrum, is there a set that you were on that just stood out? It was like the best set you were on?
Yeah, that's the easy one. Hook.
Hook?
I'm glad that we're talking about Hook now.
Steven freaking Spielberg. Oh my God. I remember going into the sets. They had just kind of finished building the sets, and we were doing some tests. And so we're going to be the Lost Boys that are going to attack Hook's ship.
That's cool.
Ship is real. It is full size. It is as big as a real ship, and it's in water. And the rest of the set is the ship has been pulled into, I guess, where the pirates live. And it's basically a bunch of other boats that have been stacked on top of one another, and it looks almost like apartment buildings. And I walked in and went, oh my God, that's the freaking coolest thing I've ever seen. And they say, yeah, this is the ship you're going to be attacking. And they took us up to the rafters of this very, very tall studio in Universal City. And we go up into the rafters, and you grab onto this rope. And on the rope is a big piece of leather. And what would happen is you'd hang onto that piece of leather. And then when the rope would sort of connect with the rafters, you had to release your grip enough that you could slide down the rope to where there was a big knot. And that's where you really needed to stop, because that was all measured out so that when you swung, you'd end up being at just the right height to grab onto the ropes that you were supposed to grab onto. And we're up about 60 feet. And I'm looking down at this set going, dude, when I wanted to be in movies, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to be on a set like this with a director that's so well known, dressed in a cool, wardrobe and makeup and all that stuff.
You're in Neverland.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we were talking about, I said, we're up there and we're, swinging down and we're doing some practice shots to show Spielberg what we were going to do. And I looked at the other guys and said, I'd be doing this for free. Absolutely. This is what when you're a 20-year-old kid, you're like, I want to do something stupid today.
People would pay to have this experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking that this is exactly what you want to do. And Newsies was another Disney thing.
Yeah.
We get into the set, and there's 2 full blocks of New York town built and completely dressed as if it was turn of the century, 1900s New York. And it was just beautiful. They'd done such amazing work. And there's people cooking food, actually the street vendors are actually cooking food and doing these things. And I'm looking at the set and I'm like, this is so cool. And then I hear somebody go, playback. I'm like, no freaking way. This is a musical? I said, they didn't tell you that? I'm like, no. They said, yeah, your stunts will be done to music. I'm like, okay, 4th grade, Bill Perry sitting in class, not doing his job because he wants to be an actor. I am so convinced I want to be an actor. And one day I'm going to be on a set and they're going to go playback and we're going to do our thing. And there I was, and I remember that moment. I still get the hair on my arms just rise up. Like, that was the best freaking day ever. It's like everything I ever wanted about being in movies happened in one show, in one moment. I just thought, oh my God, it doesn't get better than this. This is so much fun. And people would pay money to do this, and they're paying me a stupid amount of money to be here.
Aside from Wes Craven, have you ever been on set and been truly starstruck by anybody who may have been on set?
It's another movie you mentioned, Home Alone 2. I grew up in the 70s, 80s, so I'm old fart. But Tim Curry. Tim Curry. Yeah. I'm doing a scene with him, and I see him there, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Tim Curry, it's Tim Curry. We grew up watching Rocky Horror every Saturday night at the Rialto Theater in Pasadena, and so there he is, and I'm doing a scene with him, and so I walk up to him, and I have to introduce myself, and I'm just about to wet myself, and I said, Mr. Curry, my name's Bill, and I'm going to be doing the stunt with you. He says, and he's just staring at me. And I said, I have to tell you, I'm a big fan. And all my friends at home are just going to freak out when I tell them I met you. And he just kind of gives me this long stare and says, say hi to your friends for me. Like, shit, I still blew that. I gave him nothing to talk about. I just blew it. What a douchebag.
He's just like, well, that's cool.
Freaking Tim Curry. Yeah. Hey, you have a good day. Oh, shit. I got to work with George Burns. I don't know if you guys know him, if you're old enough to know George Burns, but he was like back to vaudeville days. Did the movie Oh God, just an old comedian, early days of radio, early days of television. It was like 90 or 100 when he died, but just one of those people who was a legend, sort of status, where it was like I got to sit next to him and just talk to him most of the day while he's sitting smoking cigars and telling stories about, what it was like when the talkies happened. It's like, my God, and then a handful of Bill Paxton, another really super cool guy, super nice to me. We were doing Predator 2, and I'm a gangster, and if you see my picture, I don't look like a gangster. I'm preppy and nerdy. I looked like Scott Baio back in the day. And so he sees me, and I'm sitting in a chair that says, Bill on it. And he says, your name Bill? And I said, yes. He's like, oh, you're in my chair, man. I'm like, oh, sorry. He goes, no,
you were in Bill Paxton's chair.
Yeah. And he says, are you one of the gangsters? And I said, yeah. And he goes, no. Did you ever see Terminator? Like, no, gosh, I've never heard of it.
What is that, an indie film?
Yeah, freaking Terminator, right? And he says, that was my first film. And I said, really? He goes, and I was a gangster. He said, this is the day you get to be on camera and talk.
That's awesome.
That? I said, no. And he goes, this day is the best day ever, and you never get it back. Do not miss this day. Don't let it go too fast. Do your best work, relax, and have the best time. He says, the next time you see this, your face is going to be 50 feet across on a screen in a big budget movie. Never happens again. I mean, not like for the first time. I'm like, what a cool guy.
I love stories like that.
I was so nervous, and I wasn't nervous anymore. I was chilled, and I just felt like I'm going to do my best work today. This is going to be great. And, I get a few lines, and it's, it's fun. But I just remember thinking, what a nice thing to do. He didn't have to do anything. He could have told me just get the hell in my chair. Yeah. But he took the time to make sure that everybody on the film was really going to be able to do their best work. And the movie it's another sequel, But I know a lot of people who liked it. I liked my part in it. Academy overlooked me massively. But I'm still getting over that. But, it was one of those things like, what a cool guy. What a nice thing to do. And it really taught me, like, yeah, if I ever get to any level where somebody's looking up to me like that, oh yeah, you got to be that guy, because he's a legend for it. I mean, it's so sad that he passed, but one of those things where like, yeah, I will never forget that day. Not that I probably ever would have, but I never would have thought of it so positively. And so, just in awe of such a cool guy who's a great actor too. I mean, did a lot of fun, kind of goofy buddy film kind of stuff, but he was also in Titanic, he was in all these great films, where he was just the dude, and not always the leading man, but sometimes he was. And just what a cool dude, and what a cool thing to have had happen in my life that I get to remember for the rest of, probably another 5 years until the head injuries take over.
Yeah, you hear way too many stories of people like I met so and so, and he was an asshole, and this guy like is a jerk to like wait staff and stuff like that. I like hearing stories like that about
where they're
just
great people. Yeah,
I got to work with Michael Jackson actually for a summer touring across Europe. Another odd guy. I don't know that he did all the stuff everybody says he did. I didn't see anything was even close to that, but no, I'm not going to weigh in on that, but he was a cool guy. We were in Romania, and we go to this, we're just kind of all buzzing around, and we go to a orphanage, and there's all these kids there, and there's no toys. And he said, I thought we bought toys for this place. And they said, yeah, sometimes the people who work here, they're really poor, and they take the toys home to their own kids because, they're all volunteers.
Yeah.
And so he turns to this guy, Benny, and he says, Benny, empty out the Drop-Off. Now, Drop-Off is like the biggest plane in the world, and it had all of our touring gear in it. He says, empty out the Drop-Off, go fly back to England and go get toys for these kids. And he turns to Michael and says, Michael, it's 10 o'clock at night, man. You know what it's going to take to empty out that plane? I mean, if there's even anybody in England that's open. And he turns to me and says, I didn't ask you, Benny. Just get it done. And so they did. They emptied out the plane. He flew back, and he made sure that when he was there, that the kids knew that somebody cares about you, and here's a bunch of toys. And he gave like $2 million to them as well, which there with $30 was a monthly salary at the time.
Jeez.
For the average Joe. So $2 million, that should last a bit.
Oh yeah,
a little bit.
Just and did a lot of that kind of nice stuff. And people can talk about his motives and all that. I don't even want to consider that. I just think I look at the good deed and go, I don't want to undo it. Yeah. It was a really cool thing to do, and he was very nice to us. We were paid a great deal of money to do very, very little, and have a lot of fun and travel the world, and do all these awesome things. I got nothing bad to say about the guy. I don't know anything bad because I don't know anything.
Cool.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
People say, well, you should read about it. I'm like, why would I want to do that? Yeah. Why am I going to undo my story?
Spoil a good memory I have.
Yeah. It's like if he did those things, okay.
Didn't change the fact that it was still a good day. I mean,
still a good man to me. Yeah, I mean, people say, well, he's probably doing that because of his guilt. Yeah, I do a lot of shit like that too. I do a lot of things that make up for bad things I did in the past too. But maybe not those things. Let's not go there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I took us to a dark place again.
You're good.
Is there any moments or anything that happened on the set of Dream Warriors that stand out to you?
Yeah.
Oh God, my favorite stunt story in that vein of all time. There's a scene, and you've seen this, where a big Freddy, I'm going to use the word snake, comes up out of the walls, and it tears up the place, and then it basically tries to chew up Miss Arquette. Well, the thing was, they bring this thing out, and the way they filmed it was they have her basically half eaten by this thing, and then they back it out, and then they show the film in reverse, so it looks like it's chomping her up. So she's laying on the ground, and the one you see in the film is not the original look and feel. It was big and pink and veiny and long.
Oh, God.
And very suggestive.
I'm not even going to say suggestive. It's a dick. It's a big ass dick.
Nothing subtle about it.
Watching this. So we're watching this, and you can hear the giggling begin. And Rachel Talloy was the production designer on this, and she hears this, and everybody's giggling, and it's just, it's moving around the room. Yeah. And then finally she says, "What is so fucking funny?" And somebody says, "That's the first time I ever saw a penis eat a girl to get in a movie." And the place broke up, and she's laughing. There's pictures, you can find them on the internet, of her basically kind of like leaning against her penis, that's chomping her down. And so we're laughing, and she's like, "God damn it, everybody shut the hell up." And so she's yelling and screaming, and she said, "Somebody get something to put something on it so it doesn't look so pink and penis-like." So everybody's giggling, nobody can stand it. So somebody comes in, and he's got this big, like 5-gallon bucket of green goop, and so he's slathering green goop on it to take the pink away. And then the giggling starts again. and and it's going around the room. So, it's a whisper campaign of what, everybody's finding so funny. And then every time it gets, to the next person, it gets louder and funnier. And Rachel says, "What now?" And he goes, "Your penis has got some funk on it."
Got some schmutz on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might want to wipe that bad boy down before you use it again. And so she just storms out. She's so pissed. And the laughter just ensues. Yeah. And so it was one of those things that, if you've ever had a giggle fit, you're sitting in 7th grade and somebody says, boobs, and you start giggling, and it makes it around the room. And then no matter what anybody says, you can't stop thinking about it. And it's just, you've got that contagious laughter that, you're tired, you're burnt out, and you just can't stop. And all it takes is somebody to just look at you and put their finger up and go, penis, and you start giggling like it was the first time all over again. That was the whole day.
Not a minute of film was filmed that day.
No, I mean, not anything good. Just, there's like, we're going to have to redo the sound on that. Can we get those, to get the lighting guys to get the hell out of here until they can stop laughing? Okay. Sorry, man. Sorry. So yeah, like an entire 7th grade class just developed in the middle of the day. So yeah, every time anybody asks, "What's the funniest?" I'm like, that was one of those days where just, tears running down your face, and you're laughing and crying into your arm because you don't want to leave. You don't want to leave set, because if you leave set, somebody's gonna go, "Where's Bill?"
Yeah.
Stay close, you asshole. So yeah, you're having to stay by, but you just know you can't keep it together. You just can't. So that was one of those ones. And I watched it last night, and as I watched it, I was like, "Yep, they put some funk on it, but he's still quite the penis."
Every time I watch it back now, I'm gonna think of that, like, oh.
Oh yeah, you can't unsee it once you've seen it. Then you're just gonna be like, "Oh my God, look at the back, look at the head." Oh, yeah.
And then Dave will be giggling like a little girl for
yeah. Yeah. So don't watch it with your kid. You're gonna be like, "Daddy, why is this funny to you?" It's not. I promise. It's not funny. It's sad, is what it is. It's scary now. Yeah. And that film, it's funny. I mean, you guys have seen it, right?
Yes.
Have you seen it recently?
It's actually playing as we're speaking right now.
Okay. Now, the scene I was in, I was Will Stanton's double. So he's the kid that's in the wheelchair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I actually just the other day, down the rabbit hole of the internet, I found somebody was selling the original wheelchair, the Freddy Scary wheelchair, for $15,000.
Jesus.
It didn't sell, but that's what they wanted for it. They wanted $10,000 to $15,000. But if you watch it now, let me just ask you: that film has some great special effects in terms of like practical effects?
Yes.
More than I would have thought, and I haven't watched it in a long time. The thing that is kind of CGI looks like CGI, but the thing that isn't looks pretty darn good. So you're watching the wheelchair. Do you notice anything about the wheelchair?
It's not a real wheelchair.
It's not a real. Well, it's real enough. 300 pounds. It chases poor Will Stanton. How does it do it? How does it do it?
I guess there's probably a line attached to it on the other side. Someone's pulling it.
Oh my God! If you can't see those wires, you are so in wonderful, land of just
make believe,
disbelief. Yeah, you have decided to throw your disbelief to the wayside. Because every time I watch it, and even the very first time I watched it, I'm like, you can see, number one, that it's like I look like I'm running through tires, because I'm trying to keep my knees up, because I can't step on the line that is actually running between my feet, because that's what the line they're pulling it with. And it's so obvious. If you watch it now, you're going to be like, "Oh my God, how did they think that worked? How did they not try to do something to get rid of the wires? They're so obvious." I just remember watching it, and I just like, I can't watch this again. I'll never watch this again. Look at the wires. That's so lame. And
that's the scariest part of the whole movie.
Yeah. Well, and the thing was, when we were doing it, I'm like, why is this even a stunt? And they're like, that wheelchair weighs 300 pounds. And if it hits you, you're dead. I'm like,
okay.
The element of the stunt comes in. They said, yeah, do not let this hit you.
Why the wheelchair weighs so much?
Yeah, if you're just pulling it along with the...
Well, it's because of the weight of it, for one. And what they basically did was they took that wire that you can't see, that you can't unsee, and they tie it to a motor, like a Volkswagen motor. Yeah. And so somebody off, down the way is, running the throttle on that bad boy. And so once it's coming, it ain't stopping. It's not going to stop until it gets past me or over me or through me. So... they hit the gas on this thing, and boom, it just yanks that sucker, and it's coming. And so you got to run without stepping and tripping on the wires, and you got to get out of the way when it comes by, because it would trash you. Never, fortunately, did hit me. And I think we did it half a dozen times. But yeah, that was, but when I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, I wanted to love this. This is a pivotal, cool looking, iconic, stunt from a really good, scary movie. I can't get past the wires. I just can't. I want to. It's like I want to go back and put it into my editing software here, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wipe that out.
Edit out the wires.
If I have to go frame by frame, I'm going to fix that damn thing.
Were you a fan of Nightmare on Elm Street before you got offered the work in 3? I
had seen Nightmare 1, and because my buddy Tony was the stunt coordinator on that one, and he did like the big fire burn in it, so we'd all seen it. When I saw it, I didn't think it was that scary. I'm not sure why. I guess my suspension of disbelief was a little harder to get that time. And then when I saw 2, it was like, And then when we did 3, it's like, okay, there's some interesting new stuff here. I never want to really like trash a movie that I've done, because I find that when I talk to people, it's like, but I love that movie. It's like, oh, and I just screwed it up. I'm sorry. I don't want anybody to feel, but I remember it for different reasons. And so it's harder for me to sort of like put myself in the shoes of the person that just watched it for the first time. Mm-hmm. And somebody told me, some guy like, for the first time, felt up a girl in the theater that day, and he remembers that movie like it was the best day of his life. So don't ruin that. Don't take that away from him. When I talk about movies, I mean, I did enjoy them, but I saw them very clinically after that. So it's kind of like, it kind of takes something away when it's like that movie took forever. It was like watching paint dry, and there's always smoke in the air in all these Freddy movies, and that's because these movies were pretty much low budget. They're burning baby oil to make the smoke. It's not toxic, but it might be toxic. I don't know. It's pretty nasty stuff. And so like when I think about those movies, I just remember the smell of burning baby oil and sitting and waiting while, like when they did that scene where the big Freddy weenie is trying to menace the girl, they had to tear the walls apart, and they could only do it one time. Because once you tear that set up, you've torn it up. So a lot of this stuff was so much waiting and getting ready and hoping that this was all going to work right, because they just didn't have the money to do it again. So with a lot of preparation and stuff. So there's a sort of tactical mindset you get into these things, and so it's really not scary when you see it, because that was just a wire. That was just this. That was just that. So watching them was less fun. That's why, I think Scream blew my mind, because I read it, but I wasn't there when they filmed it. Wasn't part of the film process. So when I saw it, it was just, wow, what a scary freaking movie. And I'm a lot better at watching movies that I didn't, wasn't involved in, or I didn't meet people in, because you see somebody on screen, you're like, hey, there's Dick Butler. Just lost all my suspension of disbelief when see that guy. Like, I know that guy, and he didn't get killed. But yeah, I'd say I'm more of a fan of them now, looking back on them, because there's so much camp humor to them. So much, so many all the the kill lines, welcome to prime time, bitch, and it's the chair for you, kid, and all that sort of stuff. It's like when you watch the old James Bond, the really old James Bonds, where he always had some little catchy, just being disarming, darling, after he stripped a guy's arm off. It was always done with, in good fun. I like the newer ones better. I like the more recent James Bonds, because he's, it's more like the book, and it's a little grittier and nastier, and he's a badass. The old ones, he was so swell, So I think I like them more now than I did then, because I don't remember making them that much. So I can kind of go back and enjoy them and go, oh, that's a fun scene. That was a good kill.
Did you actually get to interact with Robert or Heather at all while filming this, or?
I did a little bit with Robert, but very little really, because most of the times when you're doing a lot of this stuff, if there's a stunt involved, there usually isn't the actor present, because it's something dangerous. But in Nightmare 3, he picks me up and gouges out my heart, I guess. So they, both of us actually ended up doing part of it. They recognized after they kind of strung me up that it wasn't really that big a deal just to hang there. And so they let Ira do it as well. But sometimes, Lisa, you really get a chance to hang out with these people and and get to know him a little bit. Robert was almost always in makeup, so you didn't get much time with him. In fact, it's one of his biggest complaints about it was, God, you'd have thought they'd come up with some way to get that makeup on sooner. But he's in makeup 2 to 4 hours every day.
Yeah,
and just sitting there waiting while people stick stuff to you and then tear it all off and have it pull out your eyebrow hairs and everything else. So yeah, a lot of the bigger stars, you just didn't. I mean, like Freddie, you didn't get to spend much time with him just because you didn't get to spend much time doing anything. Once he was in the suit, film as fast as we can. We wanted, we've only got so much time with Robert before we got to take him out of all that makeup again. But trying to think if there's anybody else in any of these. Not so much, I guess. Yeah, a lot of times it was all like I was on Star Trek for a while, and I got to hang out with Will Wheaton. I was his double, but that was one of the sort of few and far between the Coreys. But I was also in my mid 20s, and these kids were like 13, 14. I didn't really have much to offer them, nor them me, as far as conversation goes. We talk about like, okay, so what do you, as a stunt person, you want to make sure that you're making your actor look good. So I'd say, is there anything that you did that I can mimic, real carefully to make sure?
Little idiosyncrasies.
Do you remember anything special that you did that, or I would tell them, hey, when I did this, I made sure my hands were kind of far apart. So if you're going to be doing any part of this, leading up to it, make sure your hands are apart because mine were. So you did that for the good of the film. But if you wanted to get work from that actor again, you really wanted to make sure it really looked like them and it made them look really good. When we were doing Nightmare 4, there was a karate sequence, and my brother Larry is a 9th degree black belt, total freaking badass. And after he saw the film, he said, "Did you tell anybody that I was your karate teacher?" I said, "No." He goes, "Thanks, man." Wow. So I thought he looked pretty good. He goes, "Yeah, that's what you thought." But those kids, I remember I saw Ira Hayden, who was I doubled him on Nightmare 3 and Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, done within just a few months of each other. And I happened to see him at one of the cons, and it was so great to see him. He was such a nice guy. And I realized he's only like 5 years younger than me. I saw him, I'm like, wow, you aged really well, man. And he's like, how old are you? I'm like, oh, I told him, and he's like, yeah, I'm only 5 years younger than you. I'm like, wow, you really aged well. Damn.
That just made me feel way worse.
Way worse. Yeah. God, I look like shit in comparison. But it was interesting because he was really not that much younger than me, and probably if he didn't wanted to do his own stunts, he probably could have. But I'm glad he didn't, because residual checks, and I got to work. But yeah, just really for the most part, some of these kids I actually did get to be friends with if we had something in common. And we, like when I saw Ira, he was like my brother from another movie. It's like, oh man, and I got a chance to kind of hang out with him and say hello after many years. But yeah, most of these, like anybody that was cool then was still cool. Nobody turned out to be, if they were a dick back then, they're a dick now too. Just my experience.
People don't change.
Nothing changed to make them better.
Yeah.
I can imagine doing a whole nother episode of William Perry's True Hollywood Stories.
Yes, the dark and dirty. We'll do the one that's now tell us the bad stories. Tell us
the seedic underbelly, the seedy underbelly of Hollywood.
I didn't know there was
the coke parties and the
seedy underbelly goes all the way around the back. I got to be honest.
the coke fueled orgies and the
Well, I'll tell you, there is one story that I won't name names, but there was a kid I was doubling, and they said. He came up to me and said, "Hey, can you do me a favor?" I'm like, "What's that?" He said, "Can I buy your pee?" And I grew up in a very clean household.
That's what he was hoping.
And I'm like, "Why did you?" Yeah, exactly. I didn't know. At first, I thought it was like some kinky thing. I didn't know when he made. When does that little kid do drugs?
Yeah.
And he said, "Look, man, if I'm out of work, you're out of work." I'm like, I can't do it. He's like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "Yeah, you will be." And I didn't work on the show after that. He asked for another double. But it's like, you know what, dude? Sorry, I can't,
I don't need that kind of drama.
Yeah, and I mean, if I was caught, oh my gosh. And just, I mean, come on, clean your act up. Don't be coming to me asking me to make it so you can, enable you to do, stupid stuff. We were talking to Drew on a movie called Poison Ivy. She was very clear about how her childhood was lost to drugs because that's what kept her working. When she was a little kid, and they were plying her with drugs to keep her busy, keep her working. I was like, wow. And she, she found her own way to clean herself up and do all that, which is awesome. She was clean by the time I met her. But what a, like you say, seedy underbelly. It's like, God, who would allow that to happen with their kid just for the money? Really?
Yeah.
God, if somebody did something to my kid like that, I'd skin them alive. It's like, how dare you even approach? I mean, if my kid falls down and skins his knee, I cry for an hour. If somebody was actually doing something to cause them real harm over a long period of time, oh my gosh. So you did see some of that. So there is some seedy underbelly. I try not to linger on it because I remember a lot of good stuff too.
Yeah.
But there is some of that where you just go, wow, I guess being in a movie,
I guess there is some of that truth to the old Hollywood stereotype, I guess, a little truth to it.
Yeah. Yeah. People would do anything to be in movies, and that's sad, fortunately, I've been my experience was super cool. I've just been a very blessed guy to have opportunities just pop up out of nowhere. All my friends are like, you were just born with a golden horseshoe up your sphincter, man. So many great opportunities to do so many fun things that you never really planned on. I'm like, nah, I was just kind of open to stuff. Right place, right time, nice guy, I guess.
Yeah.
And you got a life of memories.
Yeah.
And it's funny when I started doing the book, my wife said to me, is this some another thing you got to add to your resume? I'm like, I didn't think so, but if it did get published, I'd be stoked. What a cool thing to be able to say I did.
William Perry, author.
Yeah. And I thought, I got to put that on my business card right now. But yeah, it's just, one of those things where a great opportunity. And I think I think a lot of these things, and I think a lot of the people who succeed in the movie business are just open to learning how to do something and are willing to take the risk. And, it's like, I remember somebody telling me one time I was working at a copier store and he's like, I said, I have to be off tomorrow. And he's like, no, we can't do tomorrow. Tomorrow's a big sale. And I said, I'm working on Hook tomorrow. He's like, not tomorrow. I'm like, here's the thing. You don't tell Steven Spielberg that I can't be here because I have a really big copier sale to make.
Yeah.
He's like, if you walk out that door, you're fired. I'm like, oh, I assumed.
Yeah. I kind of figured.
Like, I'm sorry. Gee, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I get to work on a movie, but now I can't sell copiers anymore.
Yeah.
Oh no, my life's dream of selling copiers is ruined over this stupid film. I was like, dude. So yeah, I mean, I think I've had 150 to 170 different employers in my life because if I had a movie and they said you can't go, I'm like, okay, I am going. Should I just pack my desk or are you gonna wait?
Yeah.
No, you pack your desk. Okay, sorry.
I mean, that's what it takes, to do the kind of stuff you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to live, breathe, eat, sleep, poop, stunts or movies because, it's 2:00 in the morning, you're driving across town and you see a set. And you're like, oh, I wonder what that is. And you pull over, you get your resumes out and you go in to see if you can find a stunt coordinator and say, hey man, it's Bill Perry. If you guys got anything coming up, keep me in mind. Hey, thanks for stopping by. I mean, this was what your life was. You didn't have wives and kids and that sort of stuff. You had a career you were trying to pursue.
This is La La Land.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but seriously, it was so hard until you really, got your legs under you as a career. You just really couldn't do that. You were so focused on, the film. Like people say, well, how often do you work? And I'd say, I worked about 12 times a year. And they go, that's it? I'm like, okay, that's a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you spend the rest of your time when you're not working looking for that next job and doing whatever it is you got to do.
Plus, with your kind of work, it's like 12 times. That's 12 stunts, people. That's 12 instances of me jumping out of something.
And most of the stunts I did, I got to be honest. I mean, I didn't do really big stunts compared to a lot of friends that I.
Well, enough to get concussed.
The idea was.
Yeah,
there's some good scary stuff in there. I mean, nobody else got put in a clothes dryer. But when you were trying to chase this kind of work down, you're out. You're out on the street. You're looking for where the next set is. You're trying to introduce yourself to people. You're trying to work some sort of day gig to give you enough money to make sure you can still pay your bills. Because I remember my wife had said to me, "How do you know how much money you're going to make?" I said, "I don't." She's like, "How do you know you're going to make enough to pay your bills?" I always have. That's not the answer I was looking for. It's like, I know, and so by the time I got married and had my first kid, I stopped doing stunts because I couldn't ask anybody else to live that lifestyle, to have so much uncertainty, my wife and kids, they want to eat all the time. Like daily sometimes, and
the nerve.
Kind of provide that for them.
Yeah.
They feel responsibility to feed them.
Yeah.
So yeah, after a while, you just get tired of it. It's like I love the work, I love all that stuff, and it's great to do something like this where I talk about it, because it's like, yeah, I remember the really good parts of it. When somebody asks you what was the hard part, it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. That sucked, because I think about all the relationships and things I just burned because nothing else could matter. This was what I was after, and nothing was going to stop me. And you get a lot of great experiences, and you got a few things you look back and go, yeah, I could have.
But I mean, what are you going to do? Dwell?
Yeah. I mean, really, I don't look at them as regrets. It's just, because I don't think I really hurt anybody in any of that. Yeah. But it was like, yeah, there were things I could have done differently that, maybe I could have had a different career doing something else where I'd be making, I wouldn't be, working anymore. Probably would have been a pretty good copier salesman never really found out. But, you kind of look at those things and go, yeah, but I got to travel. I got to meet, Frankenfurter. I got to do all these kind of silly things. And one of the things actually, when we were doing Home Alone, we were in the Plaza Hotel, which is owned by Donald Trump, and so Donald came down, and all these different movie stars who were staying in the hotel all came down to watch us do stunts. I was like, oh,
that's cool.
A future president, came to see me do a stunt. Just one of those kind of things where it's like, people say, you should write a book about all this crazy stuff. It's like, I'm not a writer. Well, maybe I am.
You're getting there. Got your first one coming out.
Got the first one out.
Yeah.
And I'm actually writing a second sort of sequel, but it's a kind of a standalone sequel to By His Hand, called Out of His Mind.
Is it based off of Another Nightmare?
No, it's basically taking that fear that I discussed earlier and just saying, okay, let's make it worse somehow.
Oh God!
now what would you do? And it would actually work as a standalone piece, but I think I might, if I decide to, if I were ever to, my publisher said, well, if you get that second one written, we'll put it out as a two-parter. But yeah, now that it's funny because I had just finished writing the story, and my publisher had said, yeah, I'm going to publish it. And a guy at a dinner party says, hey, Bill, you're a writer. I want to talk to you about. I'm like, I've been a writer for like 8 minutes.
You're going to be getting a lot of that from now on.
Yeah. He's like, and he gave me this really, really fun sports idea where nobody gets killed at all. And I've had a couple other ideas now, and I'm thinking, is that what I do now? Am I a writer now? I mean,
Welcome
really
to
enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
I really enjoy doing it. And if I have a good idea, it's, sometimes these things just write themselves. The dialogue has always come very quickly for me. So it's kind of one of those things. I feel guilty. I have sort of survivor guilt from so many of my friends that wrote and then never got anything published. And they're like, so the very first thing you wrote? Yeah. He goes, how many drafts did you write? I'm like, what's drafts?
Oh.
I turned it in on I turned it in on this cocktail napkin, actually.
Exactly. And they published it. Can you believe it? Yeah. And so when I tell people that, they're like, wow, that must be nice. I'm like, I didn't do it to piss you off. It just, so we're all. Yeah.
I didn't do it to piss you off. It was just a delightful bonus.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I didn't, and hey, nobody's more blown away or more grateful or feeling, like say more surprised and blessed and all those other words than me. I really, I was so surprised. I expected I would get pages and pages of notes before anything, came of it. And I probably figured I'd get all those notes and go, I suck. I'm not good at this. I'm not going to do it. You hurt my feelings. So, like I said, I feel really grateful for that. And who knows, I may never get another idea, that jumps off the page like that one did for me. But it's still fun. I mean, I feel like, all right, because now I recognize that was a fun process. I know most people find it really miserable, but I feel like if I've got a good idea, then it really comes, and then it's just ready to roll. I know what I want to do. And, new fun stuff happens while I'm writing. And I go, ooh, I got to throw that in. So that part's, and my daughter's actually learning to be a teacher right now and teaching creative writing. And she said, you're doing it all wrong. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me just look on the shelf. Who's got a book? Oh, I do.
How many drafts did you have to write?
Yeah. Little miss.
Yeah.
Yes, I am that much of a bitch. It's true.
Hey, you need to take that. You need to take that energy and you just put it. Put it in your writing.
Yeah.
Well, that's, and it's that truly. When this friend gave me this idea for this sports idea, I was like, damn it, that's good. And so I wrote to him a few weeks later, and I kind of told him what I intended to do with it. He said, "That's not the story I gave you." And I said, "Well, it's the same, opening kernel." He goes, "No, it's way better than my idea." I'm like, "No, no, no, your idea was really good. That's what got me started." He's like, "I gave you a writing prompt. I didn't give you a story." Like, don't feel bad about it, dude. You're in, and
Too late.
You're gonna get some co-writer credit on that. But yeah, it's kind of, I feel like that's the next creative endeavor for me. Movies are, kind of in my past and have been for a while. The audiobooks has been a lot of fun too, because I don't read my audiobooks first. I do them totally cold read, which is a fun acting exercise when you don't know what's happening at all. You make some corrections, here and there. But for the most part, I think it's really fun to do it in the moment because it makes the reading very desperate and impactful and, there's a lot of energy to it. Where if I did it probably 4 or 5 times, you're like, oh, I know this story. I probably wouldn't put the same, pizzazz into it. So this thing's been the new one.
Yeah.
It's really been kind of fun. I'm hoping down the line as the signing thing has been happening, I'm hoping that as stunt people become more interesting to the grand populace, that there'll be some of that to do, just because I've gone to some of these shows and it's just great. Horror fans freaking rock.
We're just fanatics for all of it.
Yeah, and and the part about it, it's funny. Wes actually somebody had said to us on a PBS interview one time, "Aren't these people creepy?" And he said, "No,
horror fans are like the sweetest people."
Yeah,
well, and what he said, I thought this was a really, really strong point. He said, when you watch a horror film, it's not about killing; it's about surviving. And he said a lot of people face stuff in their life that they just don't feel like, maybe I don't know if I'm ever going to get out of this, whether it's finances or health or whatever. He said horror movies give you that chance to watch the final girl or guy or whoever make it through under the most ridiculous circumstances. And it's never luck, or very rarely is it luck. It's survival and it's pluck and it's, it's whatever it takes to be that. And that's a lot of what makes horror movies such a relief, because they do survive, most of the time.
Yeah.
And that part of it, it appeals to that. And a lot of horror movies, in fact, Wes had a whole thing about the difference between somebody laughing and somebody being scared when you watch it from a theater. You wouldn't know if it was a comedy or scary movie most times, because usually a good scare comes with a good laugh. And he said, so when it's the same sort of release of tension, in a good scare as a good laugh.
Plus, you have people who laugh as a way to kind of like relieve themselves to get over a scary situation.
Yeah, exactly. And so, when I first started going to the cons, I would think, oh boy, this is like Freak Central. It's like the bigger the freak, the louder everybody's got to try to outdo each other. And it wasn't that. It was people who just enjoy this genre. They love a good scare. They love the gore and all that stuff. But it's not like they're thinking, yeah, and I'm going to go do some of that. I'm going to go kill me a girl. They're not doing that. It's the genre is just fun for them. And when I started to see that, and people would talk about, I would talk to guys about the movies I've done, and they would talk about just how that movie just really made an impact on them, or they really loved it. And they know it wasn't Oscar-worthy material, but they loved it. And I stopped saying, oh, God, Nightmare 5, are you kidding? I stopped doing that, because you know what? Sometimes that's the movie that somebody really identified with, and they watched it 5 times. It was the first scary movie they saw. It was, the first one their dad took them to, or whatever it was that made that memory so indelible and so positive. And it's like, they're not, some of them aren't great movies at all. Some of them are horrible, and it's the best part about them is that they're horrible.
I'm sure if they invited you back for Hook 2, you'd have been like, heck yeah, I had so much fun on that last time.
Hell yeah. In fact, somebody was asking Lee Waddell, the Ghostface, they said, would you come back and do another one? He's like, of course. What did you imagine my answer was going to be to that question? Of course I would. Making movies is a blast for the most part. It's and it's something everybody. Well, I say everybody. When we talk about when you do these conventions, you go to places that are far from Hollywood, And the farther you are from Hollywood, the more interesting you are to people. It's a really it's a very nice thing to have somebody look at the work that you've done and just go, wow. It's like, yeah, having somebody say wow to you is it's a nice buzz. And you recognize that what you did and the sacrifices you made and all the silly things that you did to make that career happen, people appreciate it.
Because I got to be honest, when you reached out and said you wanted to come on, and I saw your list of film, I was telling Dave, I was like, wow, this guy's been on some sets. This guy's been in the game.
He wants to talk to us.
He wants to talk to us.
The thing is, you want to talk to people who are going to appreciate and enjoy that stuff. Yeah. And like I could tell these stories to my wife. She's going to hit me over the head with a baseball bat. I swear to God, she just can't stand it anymore. It's like, I know you were in movies. Big freaking deal. My daughter, my son, just, they roll around. Ooh, Predator 2's on, Bill. I'm like, hey, I spoke in that movie. I got skinned alive in that movie.
Did you get skinned alive?
Yeah. When was the last time you were skinned alive, Mr. Smarty Pants? So, when somebody appreciates it and really appreciates it because they're fans of the genre, I was talking to Lee and I said, so what's the big deal with, you doing these shows? He said, the thing is, I'm as big a fan as they are. And that's what makes it fun. And I started looking at my movies, and when somebody said, oh my God, you were in, it's like, yeah. And they're like, oh man, I've watched that movie 100 times. I watch it every Christmas, or I watch it every Halloween. It's like, that's really cool. I'm glad I was part of something that makes you that happy. We all do stuff that makes people unhappy. This is a thing where I did something and I didn't know who I was going to make happy, but I just met them and they're stoked. That's the best. How can you not have fun with that? What's better than that? You just made somebody's day just by saying hello to them. That's bitching. If you don't, when I hear about baseball players, like, I don't sign autographs. I'm like, why do you play this game? I mean, you dreamt about it when you were a kid. You wanted to be the guy that hit the ball over the fence in the ninth inning in the game. You did that, and now when people want to just share 30 seconds of your life, you're a dick. Wow. Yeah. Gosh, man, you got to be a very unhappy person not to want to, help somebody else feel like they got a little buzz from you. They got just a little piece of you for that moment and got to learn something that they never heard before. I mean, I've told people little tidbits of films. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to tell all my friends that I knew. I heard that from the guy. Enjoy. I'm so glad it makes you happy. Like I said, my wife and my kids, that's why I'm in the garage talking to you. I can't go in the house. I have my studio out of here.
They'd just be looking at each other, looking at you, looking at each other like, oh,
and shaking their heads,
and listen to them. You can tell that they love it.
How much longer before the senility finally takes over and he doesn't remember anything anymore? Won't that be a day? So it's been really great. I mean, when I reached out to you guys, I listened to your podcast first, and then said, "Ooh, I like these guys. They are true fans and educated. Damn, you guys know your stuff." And that was really the defining thing. I thought, yeah, you guys have a nice following, which is great. But you guys also know your movies, and you know what you like about them, and you don't like them all. If you guys had said, "Oh my God, I loved," some real turd that's out there, and be like, "Okay, you loved it because it was bad." Right? Please.
Oh, I can like those are the best ones to like the Black Christmas review. We know it's a bad movie, or the 2000 was it 3?
2009 Black Christmas.
Just the remake. That's the one where it's it's not even at Christmas, and it's basically a Me Too movement.
No, that's 2019.
Oh, that's even early, even later. Yeah.
We're talking about the early.
I remember listening to that one, going,
such a terrible movie, but
I love it.
I had so much fun watching it, though.
And it's more fun to talk about. It's fun to talk about a bad movie, a good movie. Citizen Kane. Yeah.
It's like, well, the thing about Citizen Kane is everybody knows Citizen Kane is a classic, but how many people actually have sat and watched it? Like really, like same thing with Casablanca. We recognize it as a classic, but I had never sat and watched it.
And these movies have classics, but they're classics whether they're good or not.
Yeah.
What I mean? It's you can absolutely. I mean, if you really took a a scalpel, as it were, to some of these movies, you go, yeah, I guess that's pretty lame. I mean, like there was something in Nightmare 3, and again, I'm not going to tear it down, but the gal that, Welcome to Primetime Bitch, they considered that she had killed herself. How do you kill yourself?
How do you jump up and
jumping up and shove it? Yeah. How do you ram your head into a television set and essentially either, I don't know, did you die from the hanging, or did you die from the head injury? How did you do that exactly? When I saw that in the movie theater, I'm like, okay.
I think I said that in our review for Nightmare.
Pretty good size. You can drive a semi through that little plot loop. How did you guys? Who just said? We're just gonna move on.
That's suicide right there.
There must have been.
Yeah.
Clearly suicide.
Shot himself in the back. Yeah, shot himself in the back with a 6-shooter. He shot himself 8 times. He had to
Natural causes.
Yeah.
He shot him.
Yeah.
Yeah, shot himself from 12 feet away. Worst case of suicide I ever saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's sometimes you'll look at those and it's like, because you liked the movie, you go, oh, shut up. I liked it. It's like, okay, good.
Yeah.
You can do that. You can do that with horror films. You cannot do that.
With horror, you can be like, look, I know this is bad, but what can I tell you? I liked it. Okay. It caught me on a good day.
Yeah. And I've listened to a few other podcasts too, and that's a general thing. People can watch a horror movie, hate 90% of it, and go, but the thing with the roach, or the thing with the beheading, oh yeah, and everybody's in. It's like, yeah, I got it. Okay, I'm taking it off my top 10 worst and putting it into my top 5 best.
Well, that's kind of like Ghost Ship. It was like Ghost Ship's not a great movie, but it has an awesome intro kill scene.
The best opening of any horror movie. Yeah.
Just slicing all those people in half.
That's it.
And that's it. They peaked. They peaked in their first 5 minutes.
When you can. Yeah, and when you can recognize that, like there was a movie that really screwed me up when I was in high school called Zombie.
Oh, Zombie! Is that Lucio Fulci?
Don't know. It scared me so bad. I did everything I could to get out of that theater. All my friends were watching, and I'm like, I can't watch this. I can't watch this. And it was the tagline was, "We are going to eat you." That's like the best snakes on a plane kind of description right there in the tagline. Yeah. We are going to eat you.
You know what you're in for.
I remember. Yeah. You do what you're getting, and we got into this thing, and the scene that I remember, the one that just messed me up, girls hiding in this closet, because that's the best place to be when there's something to kill you. And the closet has like louvered door or louvered, like blinds. And she's looking through the blinds, and then of course the hand comes through and smashes through, and she reels back, and it grabs her by the hair, and it's pulling her towards the waiting splinter, and it's very slow.
Very, yep.
And you see the you see the cornea go first, and then the iris, and then the fluid, and it was the most graphic.
That's a great shot. That is a great scene in a movie because of how slow it's shot.
Yeah, so much. And this is long before I was in any sort of scary movie. I remember seeing that and going, there is nothing that will ever gross me out, freak me out, and scare the living piss out of me like that moment.
I believe that was Lucio Fulci's
5 minutes later. Yeah, 5 minutes later, it happens again. I'm like, I'm just going to go sit outside. And they're like, nothing scares you. I'm like, I'm going to go sit outside because I've wet myself. And I don't really need my girlfriend to see that right now.
Yeah.
It was that impactful to me. I was like, wow. And I'd seen Friday the 13th. That was like the first real super graphic. Kevin Bacon, the actor moved on to bigger, better things.
Yeah.
The scene where he's lying on the bed, of course, he's just had sex because that's when you get killed. And the arrow comes up through the mattress, through his throat. So good.
It's one of my favorite scenes for that movie. Yeah.
So good, so scary, and so graphic, and so never had been done before like that. Usually, it was like Back to Psycho, splatter on the wall. It's up to your imagination to figure out what happened. Oh no. Yeah. We're leaving nothing to your imagination. Yeah. I'm going to watch somebody get a cleaver or an axe in the forehead. And the great thing about that movie, same Wes Craven kind of thing. If you want to know where the scariest thing in the world happens, where does it happen? At camp.
Yeah.
Where's the bad guy? He's under the bed. He's in the bathroom. Yeah. He's in the shower. It's so obvious. Yeah. Once you know the formula, you're like, you bastard, you played me. You played me for everything that scared me when I was 11 years old at camp.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what we did. And it's so well done. And, and scary. I thought when Jason actually became a real thing, I'm like, no, you lost me. I didn't like the supernatural element of that when I saw him back then. I was like, no, 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 the mom did it, man. No, it's not a real thing. But it took on its own whole life, Kane Hodder. I hope you appreciate
it. Yeah. Kane Hodder's great. He's someone I'd really like to meet.
Oh, gosh, you could hardly go to a con without meeting him. The guy is
he's in every every con everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he books himself. He does a land office business, we used to say back before when I was a settler in the 1800s, I guess. But yeah, he does great, and and he's one of those guys. He's as big a fan of the show as you were, and that's why he's fun to meet. I've seen some people at some of the cons, and they don't want to be there. This is a paycheck. They're just signing the stuff and moving. Stick and move. They don't greet you. They're not friendly. They don't want to talk about the movie. That's why you're there, man. Getting your signature is cool, but talking to your hero, talking to somebody who was there, that was part of the making of the thing that you just loved. That's the point. That's why I'm doing this signing next month, or actually later this month, and I'm hoping that somebody will go, hey, there's enough value to Bill Perry. Let's put him on one of these cons.
Yeah.
I'd gladly get carpal tunnel from signing autographs to do those cons.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Watching people who, when they meet, somebody that's they're in their films, they're so pleased. And it doesn't matter how little your thing was. Tony Caesar's daughter, two daughters, were the little girls in the first Nightmare. And the two girls going, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you and all that.
Oh, really?
It was his daughters, and they do conventions because people like, oh, you were the little girls.
Yeah, it's like the girls from The Shining.
Yeah, and it's just, even if you were in it, that's enough. But a lot of times the promoters of these things, they don't see the value of stunt people because it's like, yeah, they weren't really in it. It's like, the thing that you remember is the thing I did. Sorry. Sorry to burst your bubble.
I would think that stunt people would be higher up on the toe because they're the ones doing the actual stuff. But the promoters just don't feel that way about it yet. I mean, we're hoping that people will start to see that, because again, I would love to do some of these things. I think I'm going to CreepyCon this weekend, which is when they have out in Ontario, California, and it's a good one because it's close enough to Hollywood that a lot of the big names will be there. And people, it's Los Angeles. You're going to put your freak on. You're going to go full freak, all about freaking out on this. So it's the more fun ones to do. I'm bringing my camera, and I'm just going to be taking pictures like there's no tomorrow. People have so much fun. So we'll see those on the Instagram soon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's going to be a lot of that, nice. And we're actually going to do a live feed too, just because I think it's one of those things where it's one thing to see the pictures, it's another thing to see the people just having the best time ever. And that's really the part of it to me that's the fun, is watching people who you can go to this thing and nobody's going to look at you funny for being a cosplay person. Nobody's going to look at you funny because you just I bought a Freddy glove recently. Somebody told me there's a guy who makes, his name's Anders Ericsson.
Mm-hmm.
He makes the gloves for Robert Englund, so this is the guy who makes these things. And he when I told him I was in the movie, he's like, oh, you want me to make you one? And I said, yeah. And I paid him for doing it because I'm expecting he should make one for me for free. But I can't wait. It's due like any day. And I thought, I've never been a cosplay freak, but damn it, I want my glove. And
you don't need to come into anything else. Just show up in your clothes and the glove.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. So, so I'm expecting that. And I've really started to get into it now as a fan, the way, other fans do. It's like, I know a little bit more about the, back end of all this stuff, but yeah, it really is fun. And it's fun to go to these things and just see people just totally, I don't know what they do all week long. These are librarians, these are firefighters, these are, got all sorts of things. But on this Saturday and Sunday, we're going to get our freak on massively, and we're going to have some fun at the con, and nobody's going to raise an eyebrow because I happen to have a $300, Freddy Krueger glove. Everybody's going to be like, oh dude, coolest glove. Where'd you get it? Look at mine. So it's, I think that's just bitching. I just think that people need more chance to just let them be themselves and just not be judged for having a particular freakazoid interest in one particular thing. God, just enjoy. Who cares? Not bothering anybody.
I can't think of a more perfect place to kind of start wrapping up a little bit on that kind of a positive note. We're coming up on the second hour here.
God, shut up.
Oh no, this is great. This is what people want to hear. People want to hear these stories. I mean, that's why we have guests on, so that they can talk about themselves.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to hook you guys up with Lee. Lee is also great. Lee and I have been friends since we were 5. And he's one who got me. He got me into the business by introducing me to Tony Caesar, and Lee's great too. And he's got some. He and I only worked on 1 or 2 films. We were both in the business about 15 years or so, doing stunts actively, and we only ever worked on maybe 1 or 2 shows together. So he's got an entire, like, he was the guy that got torn apart by the 2 tyrannosaurs in Lost World.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And he did a couple of the Scream films, did a lot of horror films, did a lot of just, great stuff, a lot of fire burns and dangerous, scary, stupid shit. So he's a good guy to talk to too. I'll have to hook you up with him because he's another one where it's like, you know what? I never knew how much people enjoyed these films because it's not like you go into the movie theater and, as people walk out, did you like it? Did you like it? You just assume, you see the box office and you go, well, I guess that one did okay. Yeah. But, you don't talk to people who are fans ordinarily, so when you get to talk to people like that, it's like, oh, I'm so glad you liked it. That was a really good thing. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, we would certainly hope that you would consider coming back if you're ever in the mood to talk some more stories.
God, when you drop the second book,
we are more than happy to stroke your ego.
Yeah. It's a pretty big ego, so it takes some time.
If your wife is getting you down and not appreciating you enough, come on, buddy bag, and we'll be sure to stroke your ego.
Hey, to tell my daughter, they like me. They like my stories.
I'm gonna go to the stories.
I'm going to the garage and cry again. This is where I go to cry. No, absolutely. It's and especially if there's a particular film that you guys are looking for a little background on, because I think that's really the fun part for a lot of folks is when there's a movie that you like and then you find out, wait, that's how they did that. It's like, and it was so cool. Like the scene from Hook with the boats. I mean, if that doesn't blow your mind and just make you wish you were there, I don't know. You don't like movies, because that was just one of those moments where I just remember thinking, this is what it is. This is what people dream of when they think they're going to go to Hollywood and see a movie, be in a movie or go see a movie set. This is what you go, damn it. It just isn't going to get any better than this. Yeah. It's like, nope, you're right. It didn't. It never did. It was it. Total topper. Nobody got a better shot at it. A better, cooler set to work on. I'm like, yeah, that's good stuff. Keep me in mind anytime.
Oh, most definitely. Open invitation.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But
great, guys. I said I did a podcast for a gal in Australia, and it was 2.5 hours. And I told her, I said, oh shit, I thought you were going to cut half of this. And she's like, no, it was good. I'm like, no, even I can't listen to that. No way. And I like me. And she's like, no, my mom listened to it. She thinks you're cute. I'm like, oh God, that's so sad that it's your mom that said it. God, that's pathetic. I'm so fucking old.
Usually it ends up being trimmed by like 10 or 15 minutes.
Well, again, you're not going to hurt my feelings by taking anything else. Well, it's been great talking to you guys. Really, it's been fun. Anytime, like if you guys, anytime you guys want, just tell me, hey, we're going to do another episode. It would be fun to have you in. We're going to talk about the Predator movie. Yeah, if you ever get to see Predator 2, that's my one speaking role that I got. They were looking for a stuntman that could act. I said, well, I can do half of both of them.
Well, I do.
And it's funny. And during the holidays, it's so funny because they'll be showing Predator 2, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Home Alone 2. Like all the horror movies are all showing simultaneously. So I'll be scanning through the on TV screen, and it's like in it, audition, in it. Ooh, big residuals on that one. In it. And so it's just kind of funny. My wife just, rolls her eyes. She's like, we're not watching anything with you in it. If we wanted to do that, we could. We're not doing that this time. Yeah. Oh, come on, man. They show Predator 2 on TBS about every 30 minutes. It's like, Christmas Story during Halloween or during Christmas. Yeah. They just show it, in endless repeat. That's Predator 2, baby. I need that check. She loves
that'll definitely be our movie for the next time you're on.
Oh, yeah. God, yeah. That's another good one. I mean, that's where the Bill Paxton story comes from. I got a major affection for that, just because what a guy. Not enough people like that in this world. All right, well, you've stopped recording, I hope. No, you haven't. You're still recording. Stop. Stop.
Yeah.
Don't go on all night.
We'll go ahead and let you.
I can really go all night.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for showing up and and reaching out to us and taking some time and talking to us. Well, everybody.
All right, gentlemen, thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And everybody, I've been Chris Thomas, and with me, Brooke Ryder Dave, and thank you, William Perry.
Have a good week, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Body Bag Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave us a comment as to what you'd like to hear us review, or any horror movie topics you'd like to hear us rant and rave about.
And while you're at it, you can find us on Twitter at BodyBagPod and on Instagram at BodyBagPodcast.
Thanks, and we'll see you next time.